Bryce Runge is passionate about culture development, mental health awareness, suicide prevention, and motivational speaking. As a former Division I football player and professional rollerblader, he now aspires to satisfy his need for adrenaline by helping people overcome challenges, understand their purpose, and discover their potential. Bryce Runge combines his compelling insight with the ultimate guide, the Bible, to help improve your thought life, enhance your confidence, and cultivate a dynamic relationship with Jesus. Today on Triumph Talks, we will discuss his book, Wake Up, Wake Up, Wake Up, a 40-day journey with Bryce, and discover how to strengthen our faith, expand our thought life, overcome obstacles, and wake up our dreams. Welcome to Triumph Talks, Bryce. It's great to see you again.
Oh, it is so good to see you. Thank you for having me. I'm so grateful.
Absolutely. It's been, I want to say it's been a couple of years since we published your book. Well, it's a fantastic book. I'm really excited to share it with our viewers today and kind of go in depth with you about it. Really, I didn't get a chance to do that as we were publishing it to really sit and talk to you about it. So,
yeah.
Well, let me start with the first question, and that is, what inspired you to write this book?
I think deep inside, I always knew I wanted to write a book. And I started maybe a few years ago before we published, the book. I started doing these Wednesday wake-up calls, and they were just short little motivational things. And that came from when I was working in education. There was some turmoil within our department, and I felt like our team needed some encouragement. So, they needed a wake-up call. So
literally.
Yeah, literally. So I started writing, and then and so that my audience grew, and I kept getting more like, hey, where's your wake-up call? Because I would skip a week or whatever. And I'm like, okay, people are really needing this. And one day I said, well, I wonder if I could put these into a devotional. It so happened to be, 40 days. And I'm like, well, as a man of God, I'm like, okay, well, Jesus spent 40 days in the wilderness. And so I'm like, maybe there's something going on here. And really it was about using my story, sharing my testimony, and, tapping into that gift that God gave me to not only write, but to step boldly out on that line and say, hey, I want to put my story out there, and I want to inspire others, because I know people are hurting. I know people are lost. And so this has the potential to wake people up, wake their dreams up, inspire them, and help them live again. And so that's really where that came from. And it all came together almost seamlessly. And then a mutual friend of ours connected us, and I said, hey, here's what I got. And you said, let's go.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, it was someone I had published previously. Rod McCall is our mutual friend, and he's got an interview on this platform as well. And I'm grateful that he introduced us. So you actually started to answer my second question. I'm going to go ahead and ask it, and then you can go in a little more deeply. And that is, what do you hope that people will take from reading your book?
Yeah, I think ultimately the end goal is to, if you don't have a relationship with God, maybe this will help point you in the right direction. And anything and everything I do, I think that's my mission, using my story and the conversations and whatnot. Even if not, from business to really anyone who's breathing right now, your journey's not over. And this will help you along the journey. And it really was kind of just, hey, wake up your dreams.
Yeah.
People have been hurting. We know there's a mental health crisis. There's a suicide crisis. Those numbers are all increasing. And using my past stories, the experiences in those areas, or overcoming obstacles, having no direction or drive in life, I feel like this is the wake-up call to really get people pointed in the right direction, help them move that needle in the right direction. And really that's the key takeaway, is to help people wake up, tap into their gifts, and advance toward greatness. And that's, I think, what we're all called to. I just think life is hard. Life is hard and challenging. And we go through seasons where we feel like this is it. This is the end. We can't do it. And the book is to tell you otherwise.
Well, and that's what's so effective about your book and your story, is you're not sharing, well, here I am, a success. It's, here I was, and you really are authentic and give people the opportunity to see some of the really hard things that you've been through. You're very vulnerable in this.
That vulnerability.
And being that way allows people to, I think, connect with you more, but also to be able to look at their own challenges in the light of, oh, okay, it's not so bad for me, maybe, or if it is so bad for me, he got through it and he's giving me his tools. So at this point, I'd really love to grab your book that I have here on my shelf.
All right.
And I have picked out some excerpts that I think will help people to really understand the power of your book and also just get an idea of what you're saying. So if you don't
Awesome.
mind, I'm going to go through and just read some of those. And as I read it, then I'd love you to add more to it or kind of explain maybe where you were when you wrote that. So,
Okay. Let's do it.
all right. So we'll start. The first one is actually, you've used some of these terms already, so that's fitting, and it comes from the introduction. And let me read part of that. It says, I've come to realize that as cliche as it may sound, life isn't a destination, but a journey. Along the way, we will collect countless memories, experiences, and face many obstacles. At some point, we will suffer heavy storms, sleepless nights, and crushing disappointments that bring us all to a place of sorrow. I have faced obstacles that left me hopeless and shipwrecked in a sea of regret. I've experienced pain and suffering because of careless choices. I've been haunted by the past, pierced with grief, and bound by shackles of fear. Although I have trudged through the valley of sorrow, I've learned to recognize and appreciate all of the good while on the journey. I have also realized that tears are only temporary and that the good heavily outweighs the bad. Wow, that's a strong start. And of course, I think you really are setting the reader up to be able to witness some of that trudging. I like how you call it. I've trudged through the valley of sorrow.
Well, and to be quite vulnerable, as you say, like I've never had anyone read that to me.
Really?
And as I sit here trying to be like, okay, don't cry.
It's good stuff, isn't it?
It's very good stuff. Who wrote
Very
that?
inspired, I'm sure.
No, but the reality is I listened to you reading that and I'm feeling that. Like, man, even after we published that book, I don't think we have enough time to go on and talk about what happened after that in our world here. And I listened to that. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And I feel that because I know there's millions of people that are feeling that are fighting back the tears and they're shackled right now and they can't break free.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I think it's more needed now than ever. You published it. It's actually probably maybe it's divine providence, that you published that book right in that year. Year 2020, and everybody has an emotion, a strong and negative and mostly emotion around
right
just during that year. And that's the year you launched something so powerful to help with just those kinds of emotions. Your book is really, so that's the introduction. And then the book is a devotional. And so you set it up in some unique ways where you have what I would call first of all, at the top of the book, it'll say day 1 or day 7. So it's really delineated as how many days in. And then you have a title for that day and a series of paragraphs, kind of an essay, if you will, that go with the theme. And then you have a scripture that goes with it. And then you ask some critical thinking questions, and then you provide a prayer. So what I'm going to do with this first excerpt that I want to share comes from day 4. And day 4 is pull back the bowstring. And so what I'm going to do is just read an excerpt from the essay part, and then I'll let you talk about it. And then I'll share just for this one day. I want to be able to show the scripture and the questions and the prayer and kind of provide that sort of cohesive idea of how each devotional works. So
cool. Awesome.
All right. So this one is pull back the bowstring. There are many archery steps, and after you draw comes the most important action of all, aiming. When I saw those arrows flying in the air, missing their targets, and I'll say I jumped in kind of in the middle. You've set us up, so I'll let you pull us back there after I'm done reading this part. When I saw those arrows flying in the air, missing their targets, I couldn't help but think, that's how I've lived a lot of my life, missing the mark. In my opinion, this is where most of us are in life. We pull back the bowstring and just release, sometimes with eyes closed, sadly missing the target. So that's just a short excerpt, but I'd love you to expound on that because this is really a great topic that you have for day 4.
Yeah. So I was in education at the time, and I was teaching an outdoor education class, and that's kind of where the title came from. And we were doing archery that day, and it was like that aha moment, like as I watched those arrows fly by, and the kids were like all freaking out, like, "Oh, I missed my target," and that's when it clicked with me. I'm like, I can't tell you how much I've missed the mark just because of lack of intentionality or being sidetracked by the things that are not important, getting bogged down by different situations or circumstances or, life in general. I mean, we get flooded with so much stuff, and our dreams and our goals sometimes get drowned out by those things. And that's kind of where that came from. Like we sometimes step up there as an archer will, and we just close our eyes. And I get that having faith is so important, but I think we have to do our part, and we've got to be intentional. And that's the premise of that, like have intentionality. When you're establishing goals or creating a vision, or you're on a mission, whatever it be, we have to make sure we're staying on our highway, and we don't take the wrong exit, if you will. So yeah, that was really the purpose behind that day, was to get people to understand the importance of intentionality, aiming for your target, staying within your lane, not allowing distractions to derail our dreams.
Yeah, I love that. And every day has a theme, like I said. And so here's the scripture that you chose to go with that. And it comes from Ephesians 5:15-17. It says, "Look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of the time, because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is." And that really is fitting to what you're teaching. I love how you take these experiences, and most of the days carry metaphors. We'll see that as we continue on. And then you are able to find these scriptures that just back it up. And so it's a nice balance between sort of practical, metaphorical analogies and scriptures that reinforce that. And then you ask 2 questions in the critical thinking section. And this is where it's so great, because it's one thing to just read a nice message, and it's another to figure out how to apply it to your own life. And I think that's where a lot of times people break down, when it comes to self-improvement, is that they're just not really sure how to apply what the teacher has given them, unless something like this is provided. So
Right.
Your first question is, in what ways have you been unintentional with your decision making? And how can you aim at the next season of your life and ensure that you hit the target? So I love that. Would you really talk about that second one? I think that's so good.
Well, I think I should have taken a page out of my own book.
Yeah, and that's the truth, right?
Like you said, there's a lot of things that we could read, and there's no call to action.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is kind of your call to action, backing up the developing your thought process in the opening, right? And behind that waking up theme is, putting something in front of the readers that's their call to action.
Mm-hmm.
Develop your thought life. Really think about these questions. Don't just turn the page and then say, "Oh, I'm done." When you
Right.
start to look at those questions intentionally, and you really think about it, and you put yourself in those vulnerable positions, you write the answer on those pages, you start to develop new thinking, and there's application right there.
Love the analogy of really taking aim. Right now, you and I are filming this on the 3rd of January, which is to say we're at the start of a brand new year. And it's that time of year when people are setting goals. And I love the analogy of not just saying, here's what I want to do, but how are we going to actually take aim at that goal? And I think that's where maybe sometimes it's important to list our goals and keep them in front of us. But that added step of taking aim and, keeping our eyes open, being intentional. I love that. So the third aspect of your devotionals is a prayer. And you're just instructing them. You say, ask God to provide you with vision, clarity, and discipline as you aim at reaching your milestones. Intentionally pray for peace so you can focus and hit the mark. to really effectively aim and focus, you're going to need peace. You're going to need clarity. I think that in the course of this prayer, you're really giving sort of the what to do's as well, and then seeking God's help with it. That's so powerful.
Yeah.
I love that.
Well, I think so many people they don't know how to go to God. Well, I don't know how to pray. This isn't the right prayer. And it's so far from the truth, right? It's just opening your heart. And that's where that guide comes in. Like, hey, here's just a basic kind of recap of this, but let's put you in a position to open up in prayer and communication with God, and just throw this out there and watch him work in and through you. And yeah, there's going to be pressure in life, but when you pray for that and that peace, that's that peace that surpasses all understanding. It's almost, you'll never figure it out, because
we have to pray for peace every single day, because that's the only way to live, right? And it's sure hard sometimes. All right. So going forward, I'm just going to read your food for thought sections now. I just kind of wanted to introduce the structure.
Okay.
So the next one I've picked out is actually day 7, and I really love this. I've ever since reading your manuscript in the course of publishing your book, this concept has really stuck with me. So I'm going to go ahead and read a couple paragraphs from day 7, which is be the thermostat. When you think of a thermostat, you probably think of that device on your wall that regulates the environment. The thing used to adjust the temperature levels in your house and manage your energy use. Although it's something that keeps a home comfortable all year long, most of us take it for granted. When you go to work, who are you? Are you the one who manages energy and brings excitement when you enter a room? Do people experience a change in their attitude when you arrive? Do they instantly receive joy and peace when you enter their environment? Or do you go about your day taking care of your needs and basically punching the clock?
Oh, yeah.
Be the thermostat. What a visual that is. I love that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good one as well, along with all the other 39.
Yeah, exactly.
I think, for me in that time, it was really walking with a spring in my step, going into whatever building, whether that's work, into a coffee shop. And, again, wherever I walked in, people could feel that, like, wow, there was this positive vibe that walked in, at work, setting the tone, right, being the thermostat. And I witnessed that when you come in with that type of energy and that level of positivity, other people catch on to that.
We all know that person that when that person enters a room, it. And there's the negative example of that. There's people who enter a room and they bring the temperature down. And there's people who enter and just suddenly you're lighter, you're happier. There's something about them. And I love the idea of be the thermostat, bring it up.
That came also from a place where I experienced the opposite.
Yeah.
Where that individual walked in and it was, you get sick to your stomach. You're like, am I going to get fired today because this one person that has some sort of, I don't want to be like that. I want to be the guy that walks in, and if I have a conversation with someone, my hope is that I leave them better for having met me.
Yes. I think that's a wonderful thing to shoot for. And I'm not going to read your critical thinking questions, but I will just tell the viewers that's why this book is so great, because you give these wonderful ideas and then you provide the call to actions to actually help them become that. So the next one is day 11, and that one is titled A Higher Perspective. And so you give a little bit of a setup, but I'm going to just jump down here. This is really fun. Here's why I think you know it. This is, I enjoy flying. I like being closer to God and having the ability to see things from a higher perspective. I distinctly remember my son's first time flying. He was so excited about our adventure to California. Braddock's had a window seat, and I was in the middle. As the plane roared down the runway, Braddock's became more and more enthusiastic. Seconds later, we were off the ground and ascending into the clouds. Beaming with wonder, admiring all that was out there, Braddock's paused and said, "Whoa, Daddy, look at all the broccoli." I looked at Braddock's with great curiosity and started hearing giggles from nearby passengers. I said, "What do you mean broccoli?" He said, look at the broccoli." I laughed and scooched over to see this broccoli he was referring to. I soon realized that the trees we were flying over resembled broccoli from his perspective. And I got to add, this is funny. When I was a kid growing up, when we ate broccoli, we used to call it eating our trees. So it's kind of that way in reverse. That's how much the trees look like broccoli.
Yep. Yeah, I'll never forget that. And that one gets me too. My son is in his room sleeping, as most teenagers do.
Yes.
Late. They sleep late, right? Now he's almost 16. That was during another season of challenges that really opened up my mind. And I know a lot of people get scared when they get up 30,000+ feet, but for me, as you know, especially in a leadership role, having that 30,000 foot perspective, you're able to see, and then also gaining that from his perspective. What are you talking about? That's broccoli. And that was kind of like a perspective. I mean, I think we lose sight of that, and that sometimes leads to, discord and dysfunction.
Yeah.
And so that was a fun one. That was a fun
Again,
one.
it's such a powerful theme for us as we are striving to live better, to come to this theme more towards the middle, I guess, day 11, but to be able to pull out, because we get so stuck in the mire of our lives and we can't see over the next hump, but there actually is something on the other side of that hump. And
Right.
when you can get that higher perspective and see everything the way God sees them and the purpose that they play, and the fact that you're, the mud you just waded through strengthened you so you can climb that next mountain, so you can get to the peak. And, it's just, I love that. I thought that was so cute, though, the broccoli. And, and it's true. Look at how big, giant trees just look like little broccoli. Or, our big problems are so small when you can get that perspective. So good. All right. I think I have one more. Having read your book, there's certain ones that have stayed with me and affected me, I guess, because right now this is the section in the show where we're answering what we hope people will take from reading your book. So I'm kind of giving you what I've taken. And this is probably one of the ones that has really stood out. And it's partly because I work with prisoners and veterans in prison. And boy, this is never more real than in there. This one is called Climb Out of the Basket. And I'll set it up. You were with your wife and you were exploring Washington, D.C. And while you were there, you popped over to the District Wharf area. And so I'll pick it up from there. It says, as we walked up and down the wharf with indecisiveness over dinner, we finally landed at Chesapeake Bay's finest, an open-air fish market called Captain Jack's. While waiting on our food, I looked over the counter to see a basket of live crabs and thought to myself, holy crab! The crab basket theory is real. I watched the basket full of crabs trying to climb out, only to be pulled back down by other crabs. I've heard this analogy before, but have never witnessed it firsthand. While watching the crabs unsuccessfully attempt to climb out of the basket, I couldn't help but think how easy it is for people to act the same way. We are constantly pulling at each other. We are regularly criticizing and showing hate. We are continually dredging up people's past in hopes of pulling them back down into the pit where everyone else is suffering. Like crabs, humans have complex behavior patterns and are sometimes more inclined to be aggressive. Crabs exist worldwide, and unfortunately, the crab mentality does as well. I think it's so important to be able to recognize when we're behaving like crabs and say, we can do better.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was a fun night. And after we ended up walking, because we didn't know what we wanted to eat, but we, like I said, it ended up at that place. And just, what are the odds, right, of me looking over the counter and seeing this basket of crabs? And
I love that. Holy crab.
Yeah, holy crab. And I nudged my wife, and she's like, what? I'm like, look at this. She's like, wow, that's great.
Yeah.
I'm like, you don't get it. You don't get it.
Like,
and
this is a powerful metaphor.
This is a powerful, like you said, I've heard it before, but to see it, I'm like, yeah, that's right. And that's really what gave birth to the rest of that analogy and the story. I'm like, obviously it goes on to talk a little bit more, but yeah, I mean, you could turn on the news or get on social media and you could see that mentality flooding everywhere.
It's in your face. It's true. Social media. When I go on YouTube now, the shorts, there's always like which celebrity is calling out which celebrity and who hates who.
Right.
And it's just like, wow. I would say Hollywood is probably this golden crab bucket. It really is our instinct. I think that if we aren't cautious and aware of when we're acting instinctually in our more base levels of existence,
Right.
then we continue this cycle. And there are cycles. There's cycles of abuse. There's just cycles. There's a pecking order, it's called. There's so many terms that we use to describe it. And that's because it's real. And I think it kind of connects back to be the thermostat idea, which is to say,
Right.
don't be the crab. You've got actually, I will mention 4 critical thinking questions associated with this one. So maybe I'll read those because
I felt that needed more,
more
thought behind that.
And you know what? I just realized as I'm looking at this that I had a little arrow.
Okay.
That's kind of the final paragraph. So I feel like,
got it.
So this is where you sort of bring it home and give us the positive, because we just talked about the crabs. So it says, I make it a point to reflect often on a simple question. Am I living in my vision or my circumstances? Gather up your gumption and make a choice to climb out of the basket. And when you see others trying to do the same, give them a boost. Rise above and don't let the average crab pull you down. And when you see the tugging on someone else, offer your strength, even if you're not sure you're strong enough. I can say with certainty that you are. So there's the positive, like crab analogies, what to do with it. And in your critical thinking, you've got, like I said, you have 4 questions for them. And what do you think you're capable of in life? Love that. Because I think you have to believe I know you have to believe in something before you can achieve it. You have to believe you can do it. What significant things could you accomplish? What is something you could change about the world? And what could you add to the world that would bring honor and glory to God? Those are I think you've tied in sort of the thermostat by saying lift people up and the higher perspective, because you're taking this and kind of lifting them out of the bucket completely with your questions.
Right.
You're just saying, what can you do? What's going to get you out of the bucket? And so good.
100%. And I think too, the thought behind all of that is not to just present, here's the facts, because the crab mentality is real. And I think a lot of people don't even realize that.
Mm-hmm.
But then, like you said, here's the call to action. And I think most people don't realize is that when on your journey, when you help others, like you start to advance closer to what you are hoping for, right? Your goals, but in the midst of you pausing to help someone else, and it's often said, and I probably share it in the book somewhere, feeling down and out, you got the blues, go serve someone, go help someone. And then you start to develop this new spirit within you. Wow, I don't feel as bad now because I helped someone else climb out of the basket.
Yeah.
And so
that's so key. And that's, there's so much more, but I'm going to just let people see that this is really valuable, and there's a lot more in here. But I'd like to pivot now to talk about the title. I know you've kind of alluded to where Wake Up came from, but I'd love to have you talk about how you came up with the title and the cover design.
Yeah. So, like I mentioned earlier with my Wednesday wake up calls, I started out every newsletter or blog, whatever you want to call it, with wake up, wake up, wake up. It's Wednesday. It's a great day to have a great day. Something like that. Right.
Yeah.
And that was my mantra. And it still is, like, wake up, wake up, wake up. Let's go. Let's get it. Right. And so that was always the opening. And there was always a reminder to help people develop an attitude of gratitude. Like, you're awake, your journey is still alive and active. Did you take a nice deep breath? Do you feel that? Like, the breath in your lungs, like a lot of people take this for granted. And so that was what I was opening. I opened everything up. It was the same thing. Like, this is helping people develop an attitude of gratitude and then go into the message or whatever. And so I'm like, what am I going to name this book? Wake up, wake up, wake up.
Just what you were saying.
Yep, that's what it came with. Just a little bit different, right? But
It's nice to hear you say that. I don't think I'll ever read the title of your book the same again. I'm going to hear the intonation that you've got. You've got a great little message at the top. It says, the adversities and stress of life can leave us exhausted, spiritually sleepwalking through life. Wake up, enhance your thought life, develop the strength to overcome challenges, and discover your greatness.
yeah,
That's such a great little
yeah,
message at the top as
yeah.
well. So let's talk about the cover art. You've got the words wake up, and then talk about what's behind it.
There is a clock, and it is set to 3:56. And that is special to me because that 3:56 actually ties right back to Proverbs 3:5-6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not to your understanding, acknowledge him in all your ways, and he will direct your path. And so obviously waking up, alarm clock, let's marry these two. And you guys did a phenomenal job, and that came out looking real smooth.
Yeah.
And I wanted some color to it. There's the colors mean things, and there's blue and there's orange and there's yellow, and those all, tie into something positive, growth and inspiration. And so,
Yeah, I love
but
that.
there's intentionality to the cover as well as everything inside.
Yeah, that's the point I really wanted to make. I'm glad you said that. And yeah, the designer was able to move the hands of the clock from the graphic we started with to get that specific time that you wanted. And even though it's, the clock is gray and it's a little subdued behind the wake up, but it's still really, I love that, the intentionality, the depth of meaning that flows through the book, and, starting with the cover. So it's really great. So my last question for you now is, what advice you have for aspiring authors who may have their own stories to share or want to follow your example? What would you encourage them to do?
I heard a long time ago, and some people, they take this and like, what? I don't get that. I was at a conference and I got to listen to Les Brown, and it was awesome. And I'll never forget this. And this was before I wrote Wake Up, Wake Up, Wake Up. He said something, in regards to the graveyards being the richest places in the world. And it gets you thinking, like, what do you mean? So he goes on to talk about people who didn't start businesses, didn't write books, didn't, go into that relationship or take that risk or do this or that. And I'm not talking about like financial or monetary riches, like the riches that the gifts that God gave us, that we didn't put out there and we didn't do something with it. And we
like
died.
The talents.
People died with their talents or their unmet milestones or goals and dreams that they had. They just died with them. And so that really hit me. And I'm like, I've always been a driven and motivated guy, and I've always set some lofty goals, and somehow I've, made them, most of them, right? But that really hit me. I'm like, I don't want to fall into that statistic, and I don't want to look back and, wow, I regret not doing this, and well, it's too late now, right? And so that's what I would give aspiring authors. Like, if it is your dream and if it's your goal, do it now. Don't go another day without putting the pen or typing it, right? However, but do it now. Don't come to the end of your journey and say, man, I regret that. Don't let fear keep you from putting something out there. Like, there's always something with, are people going to read this? Are they going to like it?
Yeah.
You know what? You liked it, and you helped me write it, and you published it. And I know some other people have liked it, obviously, and that's a huge win. And I know as a speaker, when I go out and I speak and I share about the book or whatever, I always think in my head, like, if one person takes away something from my message, that's a win. And so it's scary. It's scary to put your stuff out there, to be an open book. And so I think it's just, we live in a time where
it's scary, but how are you doing with that? Because you did it. So how are you doing with that? Has it been as bad as it seems when you're putting it down?
No,
Right.
Because for me, it's about not being a success. Like you said earlier, it's about am I being a significant difference in this world? And so, coming to an end to yourself and saying, this isn't about me. Yes, I'm sharing my story, and it could come off like, oh, he's just tooting his own horn. It's never been about me. At the end of the day is, how can I show up in someone's life and be a difference maker, whether that's as a speaker or through this book.
Right.
And so that's would be my encouragement. God gave you a story, especially if you want to be an author. Like, here's your testimony, or here's your story. Here's the gift that you have been given. Put it out there. I mean, with great risk comes great reward, right? But how many people, and you may never know how many people you bless or reach through your story or your book. And it's do it now. We're not guaranteed tomorrow. And I know it sounds bad, but that's the reality. Live life to the fullest, right? Die empty. So you've given
that coffin with you.
Yeah, like die empty. Like, put it out there. Once you do, like, how refreshing that is. And so, yeah, at first you go through that doubt and that uncertainty, and you've got to flush that away. Like, here's my target. I'm going to aim intentionally.
Yeah. Yeah, I was waiting for that.
I may not hit a bullseye, but I'm going to hit the target.
Yeah.
Right. And so at least I've stepped up there, and I pulled back the bowstring, and I released an intentionality, regardless of fear or doubt or what some other naysayer has said to me, because I've dealt with that all my life. And it's, well, okay. Well, I'm going to do it anyways. I'm going to do it afraid.
Yeah.
And so,
and I find too, when you do let it go, so, pull the bowstring, let it go, you actually do relieve yourself of the pressure of carrying that gift. It's a wonderful thing to give it, but it can be actually very heavy when you carry it and you're not giving it.
Yeah. Yeah, very much so. Yeah, I think it's more blessed to give than it is to receive. Right?